So I will, foreign direct investment, let me skip that, but let me start with this gentleman here who talked about social media and big data, right? Or clouds, cloud computing, as somebody asked about cloud computing. Okay, very good question, because what's happening, and I was actually pulled into some analysis for certain customers where they really want to see how to leverage clouds. And how do you leverage clouds? So certain customers who are doing, proprietary B2B commerce, like let's say if it's Johnson & Johnson, or like Emerson, some customer I went to who's in manufacturing, they are sourcing from their end customers. It's B2B commerce. So they have people signing up for, say, the millions of dollars of worth of electrical parts they want to buy in order to manufacture, right? So there actually, even before this cloud became popular, many of these organizations that carry out such B2B commerce, they prefer to work with third-party data centers. Meaning they do, if they buy some software to help them do the bidding, to do the sourcing of products, and then to sign the contract and purchase, right? These people are business folks. They don't want to invest in setting up servers and installing software. It's a horrible use of their software. So even before cloud came, many companies who gave such commerce software were setting it up in third-party data centers and making available to multiple customers. But enabling authentication and privacy such that there could be separation of concerns. Okay, so this is before cloud. Now, cloud brings in extra aspects such as multi-tenancy, meaning the same infrastructure could be ramped up, ramped down, right? To serve different customers, and you have to demarcate the areas they work. This is actually taking off big because, see, a lot of companies, especially .com type companies, they are going live on Amazon Cloud. So Amazon has made it very easy for very small companies who are working in niche areas, and very, very niche areas, meaning their total revenue per year itself could be only, say, a couple of $1 million. So they don't have $1 million to go and invest in infrastructure, right? But in Amazon, they can quickly come on, ramp up, ramp down. So cloud in e-commerce is taking off quite big. And it may answer that other gentleman's question, rural enablement. Actually, even NGOs and other people who want to sell and get the right product to, say, low margin customers or educational institutions, they want to leverage the cloud, meaning some kind of cloud-based infrastructure, whether it is, say, Salesforce.com or Microsoft Azure or other cloud-based platforms, because they view that as a better bang for the buck. And for a very interesting reason, not just because the infrastructure is easily available on demand and you can ramp up, ramp down, but also it's easier for them to have a global team working on that platform. Like specifically one of the architects from one of these NGOs, I sat face to face with him in Chennai here about a year ago. He said, say, my development team is very small. I may have 4 people in India, 5 in US, but I have to turn around stuff very fast. So rather than telling them to write code in C, Java, and wondering whether they're deploying the code, if I work in a software as a service model or a cloud-based model, that platform itself is putting constraints and giving some tools for development deployment. So Salesforce does that. If you sign up, let's say you want 10,000 customer service reps across the globe to use that site to put a lead, to generate an order, right? You can customize it, and then when you're done, you can blow away that installation and go away. Understand? So I think cloud enablement, and especially this aspect of using multi-tenant architecture, is going to be a big deal. It's already a big deal. And I think Amazon, etc., are early players in the game. They're doing extremely well. They're going to do well, in spite of some of the occasional goof-ups you hear about. I think it's going to be big. Rural, I think enablement is happening, sort of, so to speak, because I've already heard that governments in many areas are supporting local infrastructure. The Tamil Nadu government is, by the way. And I think they are looking for bids from big partners such as TCS, Wipro, etc., to help set it up, and then use that infrastructure for various, even the government work they have, such as tax collection or various operations. So I have a suspicion that somebody will use that model also to support e-commerce operations on a private way to those rural channels. Because again, see, a typical person in the rural area can't afford to have a home PC to log into a website, right? It's out of question. So just like, how many of you have gone and reserved a ticket through one of these local places where somebody logs in online and books a ticket for you? Many of you have done that, correct? So that is an example that I think will work in rural areas. Meaning a person may not even be savvy to go and log in a website, but they know what they want. They know the price they're willing to give, right? So then you may have these supermarket type approaches where there is a little kiosk with a computer and somebody logs in and does the transaction for you. And it will work like any mom and pop shop, meaning that local party, it may get franchised. They build the trust that, hey, I'm the local rep for this website, and I'll make sure you get, say, your electrical parts or your groceries or whatever it is that you're struggling to get at the right price and the right quality. Because please remember, any of these channels, what is very important is the trust you build. See, e-commerce, one of the reasons eBay struggled at one point and actually lost some business was because they didn't have enough compliance around whether somebody is actually selling a good piece of item or something that is bad. They left it to the customers to figure it out. Then later they had to actually put more compliance around it. So I address to anything else. I think somebody else asked about FDI, right? See, I think FDI in retail is a bigger issue. I don't think technology has anything to do with it really at this point in time. The only part where technology has something to do with it, we are seeing some aspects of it even on the payment side. Say when any bank wants to have a payment system, like to compete with PayPal, one big challenge is now the payment process or what are the rules that govern it could differ in different parts. So even in US, different states have different laws around payments. So what if your transaction goes bad? Let's say if somebody cheats you, they don't give you a good, right? Your options to push back are different actually in different parts of US. So if you take Asia as a much bigger slice than US, so I think more than FDI in retail, this whole concept of retail across multiple geographies is still a complex problem. I don't know how many websites have been successful. So what websites are doing, like even eBay, etc., is they are branding the website specifically for India, and they're trying to sell to that geography. It's too difficult for them to come with one website that will work across geographies. Some of that is happening. Any other questions?
So recently there was an article that stated that the brick and mortar stores were actually facing a loss because people used to come and see the goods over there but actually buy it online. I mean, so where do you see this trend moving in the future?
Good, that's a good trend, good question, because they call it showrooming, etc., right? Yeah, good. So where does this go? See, what this is going to do is, say, even 10 years ago, when I first started going online, when I wanted to buy a computer, I preferred to browse online, but actually go and buy it in a local shop. Sorry guys, let me just turn this off. Yeah, off me. So it was the opposite, meaning if it was something, I was okay buying a book online, okay. I would go and browse a store and go and buy online, right? But if it is a computer or something sizable, a music system, I may browse price online, but I prefer to go and buy it in a book and mortar store, correct? But this practice is now getting reversed, where showrooming, meaning now Best Buy, that's an example of retail chain, is saying within 15% they will match the online price. So if you find something, you go and buy it, right? They'll match the price. So I think the trend where it is going is, so Apple is one example of a company that has defeated this trend. What they've done is, they've made their retail experience so good that people come to Apple stores worldwide, and if you look at the amount of money they churn or the revenue they churn per square foot, it is mind-blowing. So I think what this is going to do is, it is going to force that retailer with the brick and mortar store. Brick and mortar stores are not going to go away because there are too many things that neither of us will be comfortable, right? Let's say you buy a camera for, say, $10,000. It's very unlikely you'll just order it online and get it. Now you'll want to try it out, you'll want to play with it, right? What this is going to do is it may actually force the brick and mortar store to come up with good online sites and compete with the online folks in their own model. And again, what may happen is it may not be Best Buy that creates the online site. The real entrepreneur may be somebody who's able to create a website that works across a domain, like say electronic goods or apparel or whatever, because each of these domains themselves are very different in terms of how you sell or how you build up a site. So it could actually be an opportunity for somebody who sits here in this audience, meaning, are you smart enough? Because see, let me tell you, having been in this industry a while, the biggest challenge is coming up with a user experience that customers like, because if they like the user experience, they'll keep coming back. And the second thing is to build trust, meaning that what you show is actually what they get when they open the wrapper on the goods, right? So there are very basic parameters that customers have. And so it may actually force brick and mortar stores to say, okay, maybe I need to cut some of my sales staff or some of the ground staff I have, but I have to invest in a website so that I can offer, because the point of the website is it comes with certain bells and whistles. So what may happen is, just like Apple, the stores may become more like a preview to see some goods and play with it. and get warm and fuzzy with that item. But then the online channel could be the way it comes to you. Okay. Any other questions? So somebody asked about how I started in metallurgy and physics and came to e-commerce, right? Who was that? Okay. Yeah, this is a good question, and I think hopefully my answer will help you guys, because I want to be frank. There were many people when I studied engineering who were very clear in their mind that, engineering was just something they were doing to get a degree. They wanted to go into management, they wanted to go abroad, they wanted to go in computers, etc. So I was one of those few, and probably one of those few who are not very smart, who actually wanted to continue in my line and had a lot of passion for it. But what I learned over the years, and this is where I think it's very important for each of you to value what you're doing, because my professors told me when I was studying here or did my PhD, but I didn't take them seriously, is, see, the most important aspect that you should bring with you, even to your classes or to any such point, is what is the passion you bring to it? Because I can assure you, if you're passionate about your studies now, or let's say about mobile computing or whatever it is you like to do, you'll be able to do anything. Meaning, say, when you look at, when I actually interviewed first for AT&T, I was very skeptical if I was a good fit. It actually took a very good consulting salesman to convince me, no, Madhav, you'll be great. They want somebody exactly like you. So it was actually somebody else who convinced me that I would do well in corporate. And even when I cleared the interview, I was not even too sure if I want to take the job, because my mind was still set where I wanted to work in Intel or Motorola or come back and teach in a primary institution like this. But I think what you will find, and it may not be the same path that I've taken, is that someone who comes through an institution like this, where, again, all of you guys have put in a lot of effort to get here, and, there's smart minds and able bodies, is the key is to be very passionate about what you're doing and find something you're passionate about. And also, even if you don't find it interesting, if you bring passion, you can make anything interesting. I can tell you. There were some projects I went to, even at customer sites, where the projects were extremely boring. And I could see in some cases, even the people who were giving me the data or the information, they'd been there for 20 years, and they didn't find it interesting either.